everyone, welcome to the SUHNER Repair Shop. Today we're going to talk about the Max 100 drilling spindle and some maintenance on it. Today we're going to talk about the spring adjustment or tension adjustment for our Max units. This is a Max 100 unit we have here, but it also applies to our other automatic tool change units. So the first thing we'll need to do is disassemble the back end of this unit. The tools needed: you will need a set of Allens, you will need a linear scale when you set everything back. Ratchet and socket may be helpful. You will need some type of caliper or some type of measuring device. And you will need something to hold the front of the unit, and you can either use adjustable wrench or a spanner. Okay, so now we've removed the Dublin coolant union off the back of the unit. We'll set it aside. Of course, you have two 1/2 moon clamps that hold it on. We'll take that off. Now what we'll do is remove this whole back unit here. It's the easiest thing to do. And we've removed our large socket head cap screws here. The next thing is the small alignment pins. You have one on each side. This is what aligns the back housing to the body, to the transmission housing. You can do it without it, but it's a little easier to pull these pins out before you try to pull the whole back plate off. So we'll take a standard M5 socket head cap screw, go into the back of the pin, and then we'll just use pliers or some type of little crowbar, anything, or a screwdriver even, just to pull the pins out. You can see we pulled the pin out of the body a little bit. Do the same thing on the second side, and you saw it drop down. And we'll take this whole unit, and it's heavy, slide it out. Be careful not to damage the drawbar. You don't want to damage or nick this. And so that's it. Now we've disassembled the back side. Okay, so now we have our whole assembly off. We've taken the two pins out here. We've taken the 4 M12 socket head cap screws off. So the whole back assembly we have removed. The next thing we need to do is to remove our flag nut, the jam nut that holds the flag nut on, and then you have 2 jam nuts that holds the back brass bushing on, and this is what compresses your springs. Inside here is your springs. So the first thing we'll do is loosen this. Listen to, turn our spindle. Listen 2 socket head cap screws here. Then we will loosen our jam nut, which you can use a punch pin to do this, or you can do it with a small spanner wrench. Depending on how tight everything is, you can grab the front of the spindle and move that out of the way, and then you can unscrew this. So this is a 1.5 millimeter pitch screw on this. We'll just screw this flag nut out of the way. Screw this jam nut out of the way. All this does is keep the flag nut from moving. And then this leaves the other 2 black jam nuts here for the spring assembly. Now with this, you may need some special tools. This is a standard 27 millimeter wrench. You can use, of course, a crescent wrench to do this. And then you will need a 10 millimeter open-end wrench here on these flats. The thing you got to be careful about is when you go to loosen this first jam nut, we do not want to put too much tension on this drawbar, because we do not want to round this off or damage this. This is, like I said, this is one of the main components of the unit. So what we recommend is taking a thin, or you can even make a thin 25 millimeter wrench. You can do this, and then you can break these loose a little easier. Then once we get these loose, of course, you can pull this back here. Now, if you're going to take the whole assembly out, you'll need to take both nuts loose. But right now we have access to what we need. So this nut here puts pressure on a brass bushing here, and then therefore puts pressure on the spring pack. So how this works is, here is our brass bushing that goes in here. This is what the jam nut goes up against. And then we have the complete assembly here of the spring pack. So your brass bushing would slide through here on this end. It would go tighten up against here. It would compress the springs, and how much we compress the springs determines how much spring force we have. So typically what you will see is we will hold the front of our spindle. Here, and then we'll take our nuts and we will tighten or loosen, depending on what we're doing, this jam nut here, and that will control the tension. Most of the time, this is flush here. Most of the time between your brass bushing and the end of your sleeve here, your outer threads is flush. So typically we go for that. So that is almost flush there, so we'll leave that. So we'll go back, and now we'll put all this together. Again, if you wanted to remove the whole assembly, you would remove both of these nuts and pull the whole, actually you would have to push the whole assembly out the front of the unit. So now we'll go back and put this together, and we'll test the spring tension. All right, so now that we've either increased or decreased our spring tension, we put our jam nuts back here. These two jam nuts here, again, they jam the brass bushing up against the springs. Right here we have it about flush, so we have our brass bushing about flush with the spindle. We've got our jam nuts tight. Now we want to put our flag nut back. Now on the flag nut, there is a groove in there. You may have to wiggle that to get that over the lip to get that in position. Remember, the long side goes back. You saw how difficult that was. And then if you can get somebody to hold the front of the spindle, then you'll just start spinning that, threading that on. Like I said, two people may make that easier. So as you thread this on, again, the long side of the flag nut goes toward the rear of the spindle. You want to thread this on. And then what we want to do is check the distance between the back of the flag nut and the rear of the drawbar, the end of the drawbar. With a Cat 50 unit, it's around 179 millimeters. With a Cat 40 unit like this one is, it is somewhere around 128 millimeters, so 128 millimeters. So it's about right there, so maybe a half a turn more. So that's a good starting point. That's what we'll start there. So what we'll do is tighten the cap screws here, and then once we tighten this, then we will run our flag nut, jam nut. We'll run it back and tighten it up here. One thing I want to point out is this flag nut has changed a little bit in variations over the years. You may have one that looks like this with just two socket head cap screws on it. And of course you see that it's got a cut in it for a clamp. You may have to, of course, screwdriver and pry that out sometimes to get that loose. But that's one design. Another design is this. This is a two-piece design. You have your flag nut here, and then you have a sleeve that goes around this. And the reason that is that makes it smooth all the way around. There's no slits for sensing. So that's just only for a sensor, not to cause any problems there. The other difference in this one is sometimes you will have a set screw hole. So just make sure that when you look at the flag nuts, just make sure you've loosened everything there to make sure it's free to spin. As you saw, it should be easy to move. So now we have this, we'll put everything back together and we'll test our tension. Now that we have everything back together, now that we've adjusted our spring pressure, we need to check the spring force and now see what the pull force is on our gripper unit. So you'll need some type of, like I said, gauge. They come in many different sizes and digital. Of course, this is analog, but you'll need some type of gauge to measure your tension on your gripper. We'll use just some type of simple valve will work, or like I said, if it's on the machine, you'll be able to do it there. So we'll insert our gauge, and you can see we're over 2,100 pounds of force. Anywhere between 1,800 to 2,400 pounds is typical, so this is what we want for a Cat 40. Cat 50 is going to be somewhere around the 3,500 pound range plus or minus there. Now keep in mind, this is only check spring force. The next thing we'll need to do, and you can check out some of our other videos, is you will need to check the ejection stroke. Now that this measures the force, now we'll check the ejection stroke of the unit. And that's adjusted by the flag nut. Like I said, you can look at our other videos and check that out. Again, I hope you found this interesting and helpful. Follow us on Facebook and on LinkedIn, and I hope to see you soon.